A journey to becoming unafraid to speak her truth. A raw, vulnerable and authentic story of a brave and beautiful soul from Ireland, Jenn Ryan, and her journey growing up with the animals in nature.
Cows and dogs and cats and rabbits and everything, but yeah, the animals were kind of like my siblings in a way. I think the animals were the first to teach me the different kind of energies. I used to just lay in the field with the cows and then they would circle me, and that kind of, I remember feeling really held by the cows, you know. And I guess I was having animal communication, like I was hearing the thoughts and like these energies that are different from each animal.
Jenn, a shamanic guide, earth alchemist, and alchemical dancer, shares her courageous story to empowerment through the guidance of the elements.
Oh my God.
Yay, you made it!
A nightmare! Fucking hell. No, thank you for your patience because yeah, I'm so sorry.
No problem at all. Well, thank you for taking the time to come on, because first of all, I want to say thank you for your amazing reels and stories. I love how pure and raw and authentic you always are on your stories and being so vulnerable. And I can imagine that that's not easy, to just show up as so vulnerable and pure and raw.
It's been a real journey with that, actually. Yeah.
It's really brave.
Thank you. Thank you.
How did you get to that point?
Yeah, like I think I went through the whole, the spiritual journey was an interesting one because now I am at that point where I will say anything and I don't really mind who I offend or, it's really, that's, and I do think that's like the most important part for people to get to, and it took me a while. I think through the journey, I kind of went back into my shell a lot. I think when I started maybe putting myself out there was about 10 years ago. Not necessarily, I mean, I don't even think there was Instagram. I don't know if there was Instagram back then, but I felt like I was filtering myself and I was trying to fit into boxes within that whole kind of spiritual scene, because it's a scene almost, you know what I mean? And yeah, afraid to offend. I was watching my voice, watching what I would say. And then I just pulled back from the whole lot and I was like, oh, I can't do this, like, because it's too, I didn't want to censor myself, but I also was afraid to speak out. So I just stopped everything and pulled back a lot. And then I was kind of doing workshops here and there in Dublin at the time, but it was like really small groups. And then I found I was able to be a bit freer in that way, But I think really being able to step out and be raw, it kind of happened during COVID properly. I think that's when things changed for me. And I think it was through my own health journey. I saw a lot of I think with my own health and the whole epilepsy thing, because I have epilepsy, and I was starting to uncover a lot of, dodgy things with the medical system and everything. And so first I started speaking out about that stuff with my own journey with the epilepsy, and kind of that seemed to help some people. And then during COVID, I saw all the distortions then, and I kind of knew this wasn't what we were told. And I think that time it was like you have to get really pushed down and almost rejected to then go, fuck it, you know what I mean? I'm just going to like put everything out there, because I felt really passionate about the whole health thing. And I was having people reach out to me that, had things, happen to them through getting vaccines and stuff. So And then there was people dying that I knew. And so I was just like, oh, there's really distorted things happening. And
Mhm.
so it became like a bit of a mission to just speak out about this. And it was passionate for me. I was passionate about it because I'd been on my own health journey where, because of the medical system, like I had been on epileptic tablets for 20 years. I'd been, told complete lies about things as well, with my own health. And you feel robbed of your life, when you go through that. So, yeah, I spoke out during the time of COVID, and then I actually got a lot of hate messages from people.
Mhm.
And I just had to like block, 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 And so on one side of it, I was getting hate messages from people and like kind of taunting at times online. And then I was getting messages from people saying, "You're really helping me. I researched some things
Mhm.
and now I'm not going to get the second vaccine or whatever." And then they'd ask me about, how they could detox, and I'd tell them about homeopathy ways. And so it was like, well, I'm helping people here, you know what I mean? And these other people, I just don't care, And then, there was friends at the time as well that kind of turned against me when I was speaking out. But I think because I just went through that awful stage of like those hate messages and kind of bullying online, and then I just was like, all that matters is like what's true and real and like people's health. Um, and then I started to just decided to speak out about falsities everywhere. Anywhere where I saw distortions, I was just like, I can't not call this stuff out. And I was finding myself, if I ever was in those spiritual circles, I found them to be fake as well in Ireland. So I found that I was coming away from needing to fit into any scene myself.
Mhm.
So I didn't really care if I offended people. I would find that people that wanted to work with me were lone wolf types, were very special people that were left out in the cold through their life because of, yeah, being afraid to be honest or being afraid to be true. Or it's almost like being in school and like you're not fitting into the cool girl gang, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so you have to like mold yourself. So I think because that was my lifelong journey as well, it got to
Mhm.
the point where I was just like, you know what? No more of this. It's time for like real, true, special people to shine. And that's not the people that are like big influencers online, actually. Back in those days, the real people were the ones in the shadows and afraid to speak up. So yeah, I think because these were the people I was talking to privately, my voice became like a catalyst for these people. Like, as in, they were felt connected to me. I didn't feel like this is just my journey. I actually felt so passionate about like clearing away distortions and helping people understand that like you don't need to fit into any scene, and you don't even have to go to these spiritual gatherings to feel spiritual, like
Mhm.
and I suppose then I started speaking out. I remember all my stories about stuff like that, just saying, I've gone to these gatherings, I've sat around fires at times, and people have talked about the same things, about spiritual stuff. But then you sit there and you go, you're not being real, or there's an off energy. And I just thought, I don't want to be involved in that. And so I'm just going to do me. And I want to work with people one to one or in groups that are on that kind of journey too. You know what I mean? That have gone through that in their life. And I made myself quite unpopular in some of the scenes in Ireland. You know what I mean? I knew like some of these people didn't really like me then because I was shining a light on some of the distortions.
Mhm.
And it's very funny though, because a couple of years ago I made a video about like the Hill of Ishnock. There's a festival there every year, and
Mhm.
I had often been there and done different types of work there with hair and stuff, and just always been there over the years. But I just started to see that it was really like fake, and there was a darker energy being created there. And I mean, then I tune in very deeply energetically, so I could feel this
Mhm.
darkness that was being like using sacred fire as a way to, you know what I mean? It wasn't very pure.
Mhm.
um and I remember one year just speaking out about this, and somebody said to me, "Oh, Jen, don't, like, you'll never go back there, they'll never let you in again if you do." And I said, "I don't care." And
Yeah.
I think that was it. It's like once you lose attachments, needing to be involved in these kinds of things,
Mhm.
and I remember there was a crossroads, people were starting to get to know me in Ireland, and I could have gone, one way and got really kind of popular with that whole scene, and maybe got involved with certain things, but I chose not to, you know what I mean? I was like, no, I'd rather stay. I'm not going to be fake, like, I can't be involved with things that I don't feel are pure, basically. And that year after that kind of festival, I did make a video and I spoke out about the falsities that I see in that whole spiritual scene and what was going on at that, because I feel passionate about sacred fire. And I just called it out. I said, it's not sacred fire, it's a show. That's, and then that year, my video, nobody did, kind of got a little bit just, ignored or whatever. The next year, I made the same kind of video, basically saying the same things, and I got so many messages from people, like just saying thank you so much, because I was there and I felt it. And it was like it gave people permission to like kind of go, because what I found was a lot of people were saying, oh, I kind of felt that about certain people, and I went to this workshop and I felt kind of left out, and but I thought it was me and my shadows, and and it's like the whole healing thing becomes like it's your fault,
Yeah.
and people aren't trusting their inner guidance then. So yeah, that's kind of a long-winded story. But yeah, I feel like that was one of the catalysts for me when I started speaking out and seeing that other people then had permission to message me and say, yeah, I went to certain things and I didn't, but I thought it was me. So
Mhm.
I'm like, no, like trust your inner guidance. So yeah, it's really actually a big part of my mission now is to call out any distortions, for real people.
Well, that's really brave, really courageous, and it also helps people clarify their own discernment and their own inner
Mm,
guidance and intuition that sometimes we can kind of ignore because we're
mm,
being led a different way. So that's really empowering.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's important. I think it's time for the real people to step up. And I think the spiritual healing
Mhm.
thing scene has been really sidelined and led by a lot of people just leading from their egos and actually leading from their own shadows.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that people resonate with realness now. And I actually feel that I think people are really able to see now,
Mhm.
because they
Yeah.
didn't see before, I think, so much.
And I feel that maybe the people who are even leading with their egos may not even realize it's something that they've kind of fallen into, and not
Mm,
for wrong intentions, but it's like they've gotten caught up in
yeah.
a path, and it's kind of hard for them to discern what's their ego and what isn't, you know?
Yeah, and wanting to fit in again.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm,
Exactly. It's that whole cycle, that vicious cycle of like
yeah.
kind of neglecting who you really are just because you want to really
Mm.
fit in. So,
Yeah, and I almost think that you have to get to the point of being okay with not fitting in anywhere, and it feels lonely and it feels isolating, and then you
mhm,
push through that, and
mhm.
then you're in your power, and then you'll choose, right, I feel, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I love the way you work with the elements. And
Mm.
I've noticed in your stories you've been working with the wind lately. Is that right?
Yeah, the wind is a really big ally. Yeah.
Tell us
Um,
more about that.
mm, I suppose I had different initiations over the years with different elements, and I always say like sometimes an element will come to you, and that's your element for that time. Because I had my time. I mean, I work with all of them, but I had my time with water, and then a bit more with fire, and I go in and out. I still work with them all, but the wind
Mhm.
has become quite like a dear spirit friend. And I mean, the wind has nearly blown down my yurt too. So we've had quite our initiation,
Oh, wow.
as well. But I feel like on the daily, that's where I can really communicate is through the wind. And so like the last element would be like ether, the element of ether, right? So ether is that whole field around us,
Mhm.
and we need to work with the element of ether and the other elements kind of together, which seems to be often forgotten. So, like, if I go walking, I'll be talking to, like, I'll get myself into a position, I suppose, where I go very still, and then I'll start, communicating to the trees or whatever. And then when I'm communicating and I get really still and I can kind of feel, I start to feel the energy then. And it's almost like doing an energetic practice where you start to feel the energy, but the wind is a real communicator. And that's then how, I can ask questions to the tree and you'll feel the wind will move, the tree. And that's like the ether. It's like it's communicating through the element of the wind. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a really potent one for that connection. And then I find the wind is moving me a lot. Like when I'm dancing at nighttime, I'll often hear it.
Yeah.
So I find my own body starts to move with the wind quite easily, and then I'll feel energy around me. So like it's that kind of connection.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, the wind started. I think I got pulled by the wind years ago, one time in Dublin, out in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the night, and yeah, really spoke to me then. It
Mm-hmm.
was like just getting up in the middle of the night after having kind of a really bad time, and I
Mm-hmm.
was pulled out to the wind and the trees, and I was like, okay, I'm listening, you know what I mean? But there was such an aliveness.
Yeah.
And when we think of air, like the element of air, it's like the breath of life as well. So it's really primordial, like for us to connect in that way, and an easy way, to connect.
And have you ever connected with water and received information through connecting to water?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think water was a really deep, for me a couple of years ago before I moved onto my land. And I had a really big water initiation first before I moved to Clare.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all the emotions. It was really, I feel like water brought me into my real femininity and being
Mm-hmm.
proud of the feminine kind of energy.
Mm-hmm.
um, because sometimes I would feel, because my masculine, I'd be very feminine, more so than the masculine energy, and we kind of need to balance out the two within ourselves. But the water brought me on the strength of the feminine, and I worked with the ocean a lot when I was living in Donegal in Bundoran.
Mm-hmm.
And I would spend a lot of time with the ocean, and that was the feminine. I felt like it was like an outpouring of the emotions. But then
Mm-hmm.
again, with the dance, it was like the water dance was kind of different. And then I found myself really wanting to be in the water, but it was a bit cold. And I remember just booking a holiday and going to Gran Canaria back then, just so I could sit in water and kind of like move with the water. So the same with the kind of stillness practices that I always say with the elements. I would get into water and just kind of be in the one spot, like not really swimming, but just get very, very still as if you're kind of meditating, get very still in the shallow water. And then you kind of moving your body, but allowing it's like you're swaying, but you're allowing the water to move you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of that was something that happened years ago, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a thing. Is this a thing? Because we really question these natural movements and these flows of like energy, because the feminine, like we're supposed to move in spirals and circles. That's how energy flows. And I feel like the water really taught me a lot about energy and how it moves. It really helped move my arms and my hands in this kind of spirally shape.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, like practicing that, I would really again start to feel the vortex of energy around me. And then when you'd come away from the water, it's like, okay, what's unfolding? And so I did an elemental course with people before, and the water aspect would be that real deep wisdom inside of us, connecting to the waters inside of us and
Mm-hmm.
that feminine aspect. So yeah, I remember when I was on holidays there last year, and it was before I met my ex-boyfriend, but he'd watch me in the water, and he said, what is she doing? Like, the first day he met me, he said, I just saw you like sitting in the water. And I just thought, is she going to the toilet in the water? Like, she's just been sitting in that one spot for ages. But it's like, no, I'm connecting.
Yeah,
So yeah, they all
amazing.
bring something different.
They do. I can imagine so. And would the fire be more of a wintry thing or not necessarily?
No, fire is like all year round for me,
Yeah.
but it's more of a winter thing in the sense of like the long nights in the winter. And
Mhm.
I mean, it is kind of more of a winter thing, but like naturally because the long nights and you light the fire earlier and you have a longer night sitting with the fire.
Mhm.
But I I just kind of use it as a like a tool all the time.
Yeah.
Even if it's really hot and I'm not lighting a fire in my yurt, I'll light a fire outside. I'll still connect in with fire.
Mhm.
Um, and I found the fire, let's say, for example, recently when I was going through a lot of grief after a heartbreak, and also my cat that passed away, who was like my little soulmate. So there was
Yeah.
this really deep kind of grief, and which is the waters and the moving the emotions out through the water and everything as well. But the fire was it was like kind of helping to strengthen me and pull back my power again. So you can imagine the water is just like the unleashing of all the
Emotion.
emotions, yeah. But then the power was really, yeah, or the fire was really sitting in your power again, like coming
Yeah.
through that. And it's
Yeah.
like a friend that's just holding you and kind of going, you'll come back to your strength. And so fire is very like that for me. It settles me and it gives me my power and my strength back. And
Mhm.
then kind of going past that little step, then you kind of go into the fire of like illumination. We'd say that fire is quite it illuminates and it burns away any kind of, so if there's any toxic energies or anything, so if there's anything that I was going through that would be heavy, it's like
Mhm.
yeah, it's just going to burn away. So it's a really strong, and again, like practicing with fire, like sitting with fire just in the dark, in complete stillness, and
Mhm.
just watching and observing then what's happening in the body again.
Mhm.
But it could be used for like a fast dance as well. I'd have different movements with all of the elements, but always in stillness with them. Yeah.
Yeah. And is you've always kind of grown up in nature, haven't you, since a
Mm,
very young age?
yeah. Yeah. I suppose because I'm an only child and we grew up in a farm, I grew up in a farm in Killiscully and just we had cows and the dogs, and cats and rabbits and everything. But yeah, the animals were kind of like my siblings in a way.
Mhm.
And I was always out in the farm helping my dad. I never really understood the farming. Like I just thought like, yeah, we move cows from one field to the other and
Yeah.
like I thought they were just kind of the family. I did it took me a while to realize, oh gosh, this is what happened, like the dark side of farming. But anyway, um but I loved the cows, and I think the animals were the first to teach me the different kind of energies between, like we're like the cows are different. And I used to just lay in the field with the cows and then they would circle me and that kind of I remember feeling really held by the cows.
Oh,
Yeah, like really held. And I mean, you kind of wouldn't do it now. Like cows are actually different now because they've had
mhm.
lots of injections and hormones stuff. It's different
Yes.
to when I was a kid. Now they will chase you, But when I was younger, you could just lay in a field, with the cows. And
Oh,
I used to just feel, yeah, it was like I never minded not having siblings. I got what I needed from the animals. And I guess I was having animal communication, like I was hearing the thoughts
mhm.
and like these energies that are different from each animal group.
Mhm.
So and like it was like a pack because the cows were the cows and then the dogs, we had like 6 to 8 dogs at one point. And they were it was like the pack and I was in that pack.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. So yeah, they were just my family. and then I started to get close to the rocks and just building little cubby houses and in the fields and always collecting branches and making things. And you would start, and then the river, we had a river right by my house. So I always like sat by the river, sat with the water. I was
Mhm.
connected to the hawthorn trees a lot when I was young as well. And my granny told me about the fairies and everything. But I think, I suppose if you're a kid and you have other siblings, you're kind of playing and you're still being creative and self-expressing. But my journey was very much being present with everything separately almost to feel, and I was able to feel the different spirit consciousness from a rock or from the trees, and it all just felt really real and like normal, that one would feel different, and there's a different spirit for each one. But I also knew from a young age, like, don't be telling like anybody that, because that's the, you learn from a really young age in a kind of a disconnected world that you just keep that to yourself, you know?
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
So,
I suppose it's a protection mechanism. Just,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I
Oh.
was happy out in my own little world, but I did, and it'd be funny because people would say, oh, God, she doesn't have any brothers and sisters, or, you'd hear like, but it's like, no, and I had a friend up the road and we'd play. But even I remember having my pal, if he came down and we played, I wouldn't ever tell him about this kind of connection either. It was
Mhm.
it was my thing, and it was my thing with the natural world and the animals, and I think it was something that was hard to articulate as well as a child.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The words. But it's also
Mm,
maybe instinctively secretive to you because, it
mm,
was your thing, your special thing.
yeah,
And because of a lack of words, and obviously maybe other children may not have understood. And you knew that
yeah,
without knowing you knew.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like you had a wise soul from very young age.
Yeah, yeah, I guess the connection was there, and I feel lucky in a way to have been an only child and to have had this like private, intimate time with the natural world and the trees and the animals. So yeah.
hmm I was noticing your copper technology on your reels recently. Tell us more about that. I love it.
I mean, I'm still learning lots myself, but I think again, I remember years and years ago in Dublin, and there was a couple of people, but one guy in particular, like often talking about this stuff, that, the copper it'll create a vortex of, it'll help our energy kind of flow properly. It will help the soil,
hmm
for the plants and stuff. And so I remember being like, well, this is interesting, and then I suppose the last couple of years, I've just felt like, there's a lot of poisons that are coming down in our skies, and the heavy metals and everything. And I started to notice that even some of the trees, like, we're getting this fungus on it. Now, one of the oak trees, they can get fungus anyway, but I noticed when the sky was very grey and there was a lot of rain, and it was geoengineering, coming down in the skies, that I noticed that the fungus would be worse when you think it would be better after the rain.
hmm
And then my homeopath, who is so knowledgeable on all this stuff, she had some of her leaves tested, and they'd had like crazy amount of aluminium and other chemicals, like from her little like just leaf off a tree. It was crazy. She got a
Wow.
private test done, yeah. So she was able to prove that these metals, were coming down in the sky.
hmm
Um, so I kind of started looking into it a bit then. I was like, we need to change, like, if, because there was just this gray haze over the sky. And then, so I first got a copper harmonizer, and I kind of I put it out, and I was like, oh, it cleared the sky. Like, it actually, and I'd been looking into this, and like, yeah, I mean, I'm not so good at the technical side of explaining how it works. There's some great videos online, but I was watching all these videos, and I'm like, yeah, the copper, when it's done a certain way, and in like, it's twisted, I think, opposite directions and made into these coils. and
Mm-hmm.
then they're kind of put together. But even you don't even need to do that. I think even when you put like a couple of copper rods in the ground and even make it like a pyramid shape. So there's all these different ways of using the copper, and crystals as well. So certain crystals, and it will basically, push back all of that kind of dark stuff that's trying to come down, like the metals and stuff that are really bad for us, and kind
Mm-hmm.
of, damaging our skies. So yeah, I think it's kind of fascinating and like totally magical, because that was like back in, olden days, and it's like ancient technology really. And they would have always used stuff like this, and buildings were made like cathedrals and stuff, how they would have all been made in a certain way to generate energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so and then work off the ether. So like, yeah, the last element. So basically the copper and all of these buildings that were made in these geometric shapes, they were connected to the ether. And so
Mm-hmm.
like we would have had free energy,
Mm-hmm.
and so these synthetic energies that are coming in, the EMFs and all of this stuff as well, it's like it's ruining our natural kind of etheric energy field. So the copper can kind of work with that and clear everything. And it can also work with like inflammation in the body. I was using my little copper harmonizer for my cat when he was sick as well. And actually, I'd leave it on the bed, and there's like a tensor ring, and they can structure water. You could put them over water, and it will structure water, and you can use your own intentions. So
Mm-hmm.
for meditation, for all these things, so it's kind of amazing, but it works. And there's plenty of videos and research out there to show how it works. So yeah, I think this is stuff that we should really be going back to, because it's actually from, a long time ago.
Totally, absolutely. There's so many ancient traditions and technology that are coming back up now,
Yeah,
that are coming into our awareness and our knowledge
yeah,
from like ancient times. So it's like a cycle.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because when it all gets too much, with the tech and the EMFs, and we do need to understand how all this stuff works so we can just clear that energy, and be able to tap into the good source of energy that's out there.
Yeah. Trying to kind of, I suppose, diminish the heavy energies like fear and worry and anger. I suppose that
Yeah.
that could help too.
Yeah, because it's all connected. That's the thing. Even if, like I was saying to a neighbor of my mother's here today, just turn off the Wi-Fi when you're going to sleep. Turn off, because actually all these EMFs are connected to the brain,
Mm-hmm.
and then it will make people go into these states of fear and worry and stuff. Because even when I work with people on a one-to-one basis, and people have their fears and their worries and these denser energies, and I'll just like the first thing I'll say is, are you sleeping with Wi-Fi at nighttime? Because when that stuff goes, because our brain is in theta, it goes into that more open. As soon as we sleep, we're in that really relaxed kind of theta wave,
Mm-hmm.
and then if there's any synthetic frequencies coming in through EMFs, it can really be infiltrated through our sleep. And so
Mm-hmm.
people wake up, and then they're like, oh, I feel awful today. I'm in fear, feel anxious. And I'm like, well, a part of it is to do with the
Mm-hmm.
EMFs coming in and going into your brain at night times, because it's stronger at night time. So I've actually tested this myself, and I
Yeah.
can see the difference. So it's so connected. That's it. Like it's not like we just do some talk therapy and then the mind is okay. It's like it's connected to the body, it's connected to everything around.
Mm-hmm. And can I ask, what other advice do you give your clients about managing fear? Because it's quite
Mm.
heavy at the moment.
It's such a heavy one. Yeah. I think with fear, I like to really bring them to like a place of empowerment, going, if something starts to, because that's what I did with my journey. I was really in fear like years and years ago, when I started to find out a lot about the stuff. And I think a lot of people are finding out about a lot of things the last couple of years. So it's like oh my God, it's like a bomb going off for people and their nervous system. It's so overwhelming and scary. Like I see where the fear comes from. And like for me, it would have been long time ago that I'd been uncovering a lot of things. So it was like I had my initial like, oh, it's awful and I'm so scared and the world is but I had
Mm-hmm.
that years ago. So now like nothing shocks me. But I suppose I went from like that really deep depression, fear, suicidal, like just all of the things. And now I would say it's like when I find something bad out, I'm so aware of my energy that I'm like, okay, I turn it into empowerment, and I try to bring my clients on that journey of like fear into their power more so. Like
Mm-hmm.
whatever's scaring you, like you're going to really use that to learn how to become like, even like more powerful. So
Yeah.
the fear is a catalyst for your power, really,
Mm-hmm.
and let it be like that teacher that's going to. So when you find out something bad, that scares you or whatever, you're going to find out a new way to combat that. And that makes you kind of superhuman.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to come at it from that angle,
Mm-hmm.
and share it to people as well. Like, I think it's important that people know how strong their energy is. So, if the frequency of love can actually heal us, like the frequency of fear can make you very sick. And I
Mm-hmm.
think really helping people to understand the damage that fear can do to the body as
Mm-hmm.
well, and how it sits in there and makes you very physically sick.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would do, it depends. Sometimes with clients, I'll do different journeys with them. I can do some shamanic journeys
Mm-hmm.
as well. And so it's never about diminishing the fear, but it's just like transmuting it. And so the energy doesn't get lost, and it's not like you have to release stuff. You're going to change it though into gold, you know.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're kind of guided them from fear to kind of like warriorness.
Yeah,
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 that's good.
yeah,
And it's like you're 100% right. To change our fear as a tool into empowerment is
yeah,
basically power.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if somebody wanted to find you, where would they go?
Probably Instagram at the
Mm-hmm.
moment is the best place. I mean, I'm on Facebook, but I probably Instagram is probably better because I
Mm-hmm.
share more on my stories there, and I don't like taking too many friend requests on Facebook. So yeah, at the moment, Instagram's probably the best place. I don't have a website as such at the moment. I have
Mm-hmm.
to do a website, I guess, soon, but I keep putting it off, and I just want to share
Mm-hmm.
openly, and then I just want people to resonate with me or they don't. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'd be more up for people going onto my Instagram and having a little listen to some videos and see if anything lands, and then they can reach out to me privately, and then we'll pass numbers, and then I'll leave them a voice note on WhatsApp, and we'll go deeper into stuff that way. And people can reach out to me and ask me anything. And if they don't want to book in, you know what I mean? Because sometimes it's like an unfolding. Sometimes people get very like, oh, I really want to dive in. And then they go into fear, like, oh, I'm going to have to. So I always say to people, like, I meet you where you're at.
Yeah.
There's no pressure. You know what I mean?
It's like small steps. It's I
Yeah.
suppose this journey doesn't have to go fast. It doesn't need to be rushed. As slow as
No.
we need to take. In fact, the slower the better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
I'll link your Instagram in the show notes.
Yeah.
And is there any
Yeah.
advice you'd like to give anyone who's listening right now at the moment in this
Mm,
hectic world?
yeah. I think simplicity, like just peeling everything back, and if you feel like everything is getting a bit much, to just come away from the online stuff too, because sometimes I'll share, yeah, useful things for the madness out there, but then I'm often worried about sharing that stuff because I don't want people to go into fear or overwhelm. So I'd always
Mhm.
preface by say just come away from it all. Like if something starts to feel overwhelming, come away from it completely and just take your time. And I think no the other thing that I would say is like noticing your own energetic and emotional charge. So
Mhm.
if you're scrolling or talking about something even to somebody, and you're noticing that you're getting very ungrounded, and the charge of energy gets a bit high, and it's like, it's not a slow kind of grounded feeling, then know that you want to step away, and you don't want to go in and even look into that. Don't start looking into things out there until you feel kind of solid and balanced, because that's the number one thing. It doesn't matter what's happening out there in the world if your core and isn't strong and you're not balanced. So yeah, just remembering to just go slower and check in all the time.
I love that advice. I think it's important to take a break from technology every once in a while and just go into like stillness and understand how we're feeling.
Yeah,
it's hard to check in when there's constant stimulation in our hands. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's so important because it's all just there. Like the nature is there, the animals, just reach for them.
Yeah, totally. You can't go wrong with. You'll never regret going into nature for a walk by yourself without any distractions.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and the other thing I would say, I suppose sometimes when people are in a really stuck kind of place and feeling, if they have gone to that low place and the body, and sometimes the body feels so rigid that you can't move, and so I notice this a lot, and even it's been with myself over the years too, where you go, oh, I should shake my body out, or I should do some yoga, or I should go for a walk, but there's the body's like locked in position sometimes if people have gone quite low, or the fear has grasped them so much that their body might be locked, so in that moment the worst thing you can do is feel disappointed in yourself, just like start to I would say physically open the body, because there's a feeling of wanting to constrict, when people get that stuck energy within themselves, and even just like opening the body and lying flat on the ground and just feeling the ground beneath you. And even if you can just do that much and putting on some beautiful music, just like the really small kind of steps, and knowing that that's enough, like, because that brings you to the next place, you know what I mean? Where maybe you can just go sit outside and start to feel nature, and just really like baby steps. And don't be upset with yourself if you can't like go for your walk. Just kind of start to open the body. I feel like, because there's this restriction, and like we naturally go into like fetal position sometimes when we're feeling like, when I work with people, I do work with the body as well. It's very somatic for me, because I had that journey with myself with the brain, the epilepsy, and it was all the energy gets very high up here, and it's very much coming back into the body. So yeah, just opening the body out even, and seeing what that feels like.
Yeah, it's holding space, I suppose, and allowing just little steps to flow naturally without any judgment.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Jen. That's lovely advice, and it's been so lovely chatting to you.
Yeah, you too. Finally, we got on the Zoom. Oh my God.
If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask us some questions, and maybe we'll get Jen back on.
Yeah, anytime. Yeah, so lovely to chat to you, Sarah.
You too. I hope you have a lovely, what day is today? Monday. A lovely week. And talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Look forward to chatting again.
Thank you too.
Bye, Sarah. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your open heart, your open mind, and your open ears. Remember to check the show notes if you want to reach out to Jen or myself. And if you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments. I'd also be so overly grateful if you could like, subscribe, or rate the podcast, depending on the platform that you're listening on, just so that it can reach more people and hopefully help anybody else out there who might need it during these hard times. Thank you so much again. From my heart to yours, take care and see you next week.